Well, flying blind there. Hello, friends. Hello, lovers. And thank you for joining us. This is 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir.
Hello. We are broadcasting to you live from the year 2023.
2023?
Yeah, 2023. So we are
Holy
broadcasting
heck.
from the future.
All right. Yes. Today is
January 1st.
January 1st? Oh my God. Okay. Seriously, folks, thank you for joining us. This is 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir, and today is, yes, the first day of 2023, and it is time both to celebrate and do some massive thinking and planning and all that good stuff associated with it, because you have 364 days left remaining to make 2023 your best year yet.
Only 364 days.
That's right. Now, if you're looking for motivation, inspiration, or just accountability buddies, yes, you come to the right place. Christmas is just 358 days away. Halloween in 303. But more seriously, folks, Valentine's Day is 44 days. If you've got a Valentine in your life, and that could be a sweetheart, could be a son or daughter, it could be a mother or father, it could be a close friend, think about it ahead of time. We always encourage you not to wait until the last minute, because I had a bit of that over the Christmas holidays, and man, some pre-planning would have done me well. Real quick, and this may be a short show, don't we always say that, but on this date, this was the date Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, New Year's Day, 1863. President Abraham Lincoln issues the Emancipation Proclamation as the nation approaches its third year of the Civil War. And the proclamation declared that all persons held as slaves within the rebellious states are and henceforth shall be free. So this only applied to states that had seceded from the United States, leaving slavery untouched in the loyal but slaveholding border states, and expressly exempted parts of the Confederacy, the southern secessionist states, that had already come under Northern control. We said before, the way in which Lincoln freed the slaves was complicated, and a lot of people have used that to suggest that wasn't really what he was going for. But despite these limitations, the proclamation captured the hearts and imagination of millions of Americans and fundamentally transformed the character of the war. So after this date, 1863, every advance of federal troops expanded the domain of freedom. Moreover, the proclamation announced the acceptance of black men into the Union Army and Navy, enabling the liberated to become the liberators. By the end of the war, almost 200,000 black soldiers and sailors had fought for the Union and for freedom.
Well, we have a wonderful conglomeration of wonderful people in the YouTube chat.
I see that.
It's so wonderful.
Yes,
I love it.
and on Facebook Live. And I mentioned Facebook Live because right now, the writer, Jim Ashley, is by his lonesome in there. So if anybody's watching on Facebook, join us there too. Although we are working on getting those YouTube numbers up. So thank you to all of you who are on YouTube. I mentioned Jim Ashley because his latest post, his writings on grief, which he originally wrote in 2018, but just reposted on his Facebook wall. You should take a look at that.
Yeah.
It's a very good essay on grief. We've talked about grief before. It's complicated, should never be shrugged off. You should never handle it badly, like saying, oh, it's okay, or you'll be all right, or it's for the better, or they're in a better place. There are 100 ways to get grief wrong.
It's terrible.
And if you, like all of us, have made those mistakes before, read Jim's essay on that.
Yeah, my motto is, if you need to, cry often. And, Yeah,
if you need to, cry often.
Yes.
Absolutely. It's interesting on Twitter, and the reason why Jim's essay stuck out for me is because on Twitter there was just a post that asked the question, do you think every loss is a part of an emptiness that can be filled with newness? I appreciate the intention of the person who posted that, but I had to answer the question, do you think every loss is an emptiness that can be filled with newness? And the answer is obviously no. I don't think every loss is like that.
Yeah.
But
some are. Yeah, some losses are irreplaceable.
Yes. And there's no newness to be found. But
yeah.
It is true that nearly every experience of loss is an opportunity for grief and anger and sadness and coping and reflection and growth and appreciation and acceptance and peace. So it's complicated.
Yeah.
And I think that is the answer to any question like that.
I need to give a shout out to everybody out there who has reminisced about, people who are no longer with us or with you,
Yes.
loved ones that are no longer with you. Because it's very sad during the holidays when that occurs, when that happens.
Yes.
And I've been actually contemplating about this quite a lot because I've been really missing my mom, who we haven't had in our lives for the last 12 years, something like that. God, anyway, you really miss people like that. You really miss your parents. Obviously, if they're not good to you, maybe not so much. But if they had been good to you, yeah, it's quite heavy, especially during the holidays. But one of the things that I've thought about is how to remember the good times in a way that is that will give you a smile, that will give you a twinkle in your eye, the same twinkle in your eye that your loved one once had, and be able to process it that way. There have been a lot of people in our lives who have passed away, at least a few people who just, I look back at them and I'm not sad about their death anymore, because I just had so many happy memories with them, and they just bring a smile to my face, and it's just really, really wonderful. So I'm trying to work on those people who I really, really miss, but missed a little bit, just way too much. And I need to find ways to think of them in a happier framework.
Yes. Yeah, it is worth acknowledging it can be a challenging time of year.
Yeah.
With those of us who have something to grieve for, and I don't know hardly anybody who doesn't have something to grieve over. So thank you for posting that essay once again, Jim. It turns out, looking at the chat, the Jim that's in the chat is not the author. He says I'm Jim's clone. Although I happen to know Jim Ashley has a sometimes whimsical and wry sense of humor, so who knows? Also on this date, in 1958, January 1st, New Year's Day, on this date, the inmate, this is a story I didn't know, inmate Merle Haggard heard Johnny Cash play San Quentin State Prison. This is 65 years ago today. Folsom Prison Blues is famous for giving Johnny Cash his first top 10 country hit in 1956, and his live concert performance at Folsom gave his flagging career a critical jump start in 1968. But the prison with which Johnny Cash was most closely associated wasn't Folsom, it was San Quentin, a maximum security penitentiary just outside of San Francisco. San Quentin is where Cash played his first ever prison concert, January 1st, New Year's Day, 1958, a concert that helped set Merle Haggard, then a 20-year-old San Quentin inmate. I'm guessing the Merle Haggard fans already know this story, but I didn't. This is after he attempted to rob a Bakersfield roadhouse after teenage years of all sorts of small crimes, on the path toward becoming himself a country music legend.
Wow.
So, shout out to the man, Johnny Cash, and also Merle Haggard.
Yeah, Merle Haggard lived until he was 79. So
talk about turning his life around.
Turning your life around and living it out.
Well, we talked about the challenges of those who grew up without father figures, and Haggard's father died when he was a young teenager, and his life went askew at that point, and he ended up in a maximum security prison.
Wow.
And eventually turned his life around. Birthdays on this date, real quick. Paul Revere, American silversmith and patriot who alerted the colonial militia to the approach of British forces before the battles of Lexington and Concord. Born on this date, New Year's Day, 1735, and close enough to that. Betsy Ross was born 1752 on New Year's Day as well. She is, of course, the seamstress credited with creating the first American flag. There's some question about that. A couple different sources say Betsy Ross's name became famous when she was later included in Charles Weisberger's painting, The Birth of Our Nation's Flag. We've all seen that painting of Betsy Ross sewing the flag, exhibited at the World's Columbian Exposition in 1893. Prints of the painting were made and were widely distributed, thus giving rise to the belief that Ross had made the first original American flag. She has been traditionally credited with having sewn the first American flag, but in fact, this is far from certain, and all that can be proved is that she was one of a group of women in Philadelphia employed to make flags during and after the American Revolution. And I'm just fine with her being a symbol and a part of that, whether she happened to be the very first person to sew those stars and those stripes on in exactly that configuration. So shout out to Betsy, the late, of course, Betsy Ross, born on this date, 1752. And finally, one more, and all of these are folks who have been in the past. There weren't any notable people born today, well, that I found notable today, but finally, George Washington Carver, nicknamed the Black Leonardo, born on January 1st, New Year's Day, 1864, an enslaved African-American before becoming one of the world's greatest geniuses. He became the first black person to get into Iowa State University. Carver obtained a degree in agriculture and mechanics art and became well known, tagged as the father of the peanut industry. Carver published his popular bulletin titled How to Grow Peanuts and 105 Ways of Preparing It for Human Consumption. In 1916, invented over 300 products. So, shout out to the late George Washington Carver.
Yeah.
I shout him out. I call him out both because he was a great man and as a black man in that era faced challenges most of us will never know, but also you can go to his house.
Yeah, you can go to his house, the cabin where he grew up. And that's at the Henry Ford Museum in Greenfield Village in Dearborn, Michigan. And the same place where they have the Wright Brothers home and bicycle shop, the original from Dayton, Ohio. But yeah, no, George Washington Carver was a great man. He was very good friends with Henry Ford and Thomas Edison and all those friends of Henry Ford's. And yeah, actually, George Washington Carver had some commonalities with Henry Ford in the sense that they were both, for the most part, vegetarian. And yeah, so it was they were both very healthy until their very old ages and chop their own wood, however. but
good way
but
of putting
it was. You can actually visit George Washington Carver's cabin on Maple Lane in Greenfield Village.
His garden workshop is there as well, the office that he managed the gardens from.
He helped Henry Ford with his with the Edison Institute, his school there in Greenfield Village, and they worked together quite a bit. So it was
so good,
absolutely fantastic.
So we've got some fun in the chat. Sarah, for example, is in there. A couple of people catching us live, maybe for the first time. Joe says, "Oh my stars, I can finally join. Happy New Year."
Happy New Year, Joe. Oh my gosh.
Like most of these kind of shows, we get more views after the live show than we do live. But I love people live. I love the chat. Love to be partying with all you good people, especially today on New Year's Day. And some of the folks we partied with in person last night. Apollo Zeus asks, where's the Jim Ashley essay that I mentioned? And the answer to that is to go to Jim Ashley's profile on Facebook.
Yeah.
I don't have a link to it because I did not have that in the original show notes. I happened to see it after the fact.
Just look him up and you'll find him, and there he is. He's friends with us, so you know.
Yeah, the one who is friends with us. The Jim Ashley who is friends with the Nacers. There you go. I think Apollo Zeus is the one who always calls us, hey, Nacers, like by our last name.
Yeah.
But without a Mr. or Mrs., just like if I said, hey, Zeus, as opposed to, hey, Mr. Zeus. So I don't know. We got to work on that guy for that. I think we just did. And finally, well, there's no finally, but yes, it is also Copyright Law Day. Now, I know all of you, especially fans of Ayn Rand, objectivists, people who are rational in thought and in action, purely, totally, completely, reverently respect the fact of copyrights. But if you're one of those people who thinks, no, man, I think copyrights are misused, or our libertarian friends who might be thinking, oh, no, man, I think copyrights are totally artificial and they get in the way of people making stuff. You totally need to check out the work of Professor Adam Mossoff, professor of law at Antonin Scalia Law School, George Mason University. Link to his profile and his Twitter account, which is fun to follow, are in the show notes, in the description on YouTube or on Facebook. Both of those places already have the show notes up to date with links to all the stuff we're talking about. Copyright Law Day, but it's also, and this is also fun and has fun links for you, International Public Domain Day. So, for example, the works of an author, writer, fiction writer, those copyrights are good for 75 years, and they can be renewed. I don't know to what extent. You'd have to ask Professor Mossoff about that. But at some point, if you don't renew your copyrights, this happened with the British edition of Ayn Rand's Anthem, those works fall into the public domain. And today is International Public Domain Day. And to celebrate that, I have included links in the show notes to Gutenberg.org, Project Gutenberg, as well as LibriVox.org, which is the audiobook version of that. Now, what is Project Gutenberg? It's a place where they've compiled a whole mess. I won't say all, because I'm sure there are n-1, nearly infinite amount of those, but all of these great works that are available in the public domain have been aggregated at Project Gutenberg. And the fun thing is, a few years back, Project Gutenberg started another project to have people read them out loud and record them, essentially to make audiobooks out of them, like a public domain version of Audible, and that's at LibriVox.org. That's where I listened, for example, recently to most of A Christmas Carol, although I only say most of because part of it I actually got to hear the even better commercial version that is available on Audible.
With Tim Curry.
With Tim Curry reading A Christmas Carol.
So good. He brings so much goodness to that.
It's unbeatable. But the one on LibriVox is very good. One more, it's Mummers Parade Day, January 1st each year. Now, the Mummers in, Philadelphia?
Yes, in Philadelphia.
Philadelphia. They're a little different than the Christmas Mummers that we have, for example, at Greenfield Village.
Historically, it traces back.
It traces back to the same thing. I think of it more like the Marche du Nain Rouge.
Yes.
And if you don't know what that is, that's the March of the Red Devil in Detroit.
Yes.
It is a charming, whimsical, silly parade that we have participated in.
Silly and whimsical. The Nain Rouge is the red dwarf or devil that appears when bad things are going to happen in Detroit. Yes. And so every year in March, everybody joins the parade. You can just be yourself in the parade, dress up however you like. And at the very end, the Nain Rouge comes out. He says, "I'm going to take over the city," and then there's sort of like a little play action there, and then somebody comes up, and the whole crowd, gets up, and they ban the Nain Rouge for a year, and then he's banned. Yes. He's banished.
So we need to talk about the concept of scapegoats. And the idea of a scapegoat is you would then, in olden days when people were all mystical and didn't have science and didn't understand anything, and a group of people would take a goat, this poor, innocent goat, and they would then take everything that they had failed at, or everything bad that had happened to their community, or everything that they were guilty of, and they would somehow, a priest or somebody would transfer the guilt, the blame to this goat, and then they slaughter the goat. So that'll solve your problems, right?
Sounds like sin eaters.
And a parade like the Marche du Nain Rouge might seem like that because it kind of is. But the great thing about the idea of scapegoats is if you know better, if you don't fall for that particular mysticism or cognitive failure, it's something to laugh at. You laugh at the idea of that scapegoat. And then you go out and you actually do something about what that old practice would do. So in the case of the Marche du Nain Rouge, those of us who believe in the city of Detroit but participate in this parade, we're not really blaming the Red Dwarf for the city falling apart. We're just saying the city falling apart is just, it's something that should never have happened. It's something foolish. It's something we can, in a way, we can laugh about it because we're doing something about it. We're not just
Yeah.
scapegoating. So I love it.
Well, Detroit's a much better city than it was in the 90s.
Yeah.
Or even 15 years ago.
Totes.
Yep.
Totes. I'm going to do a quick refresh here. My Facebook feed is running slow. Nope, we're still good. All right, good. And finally, there is one more holiday today. Something about the New Year. I forget. So, as I discussed on a recent podcast.
The New Year, yeah.
Yeah. as I discussed on a recent podcast. Well, actually, before I give that big spoiler there.
Yeah.
What are we listening to this week? Anything interesting you were listening to this week? I'll tell you one thing that's fun. And you would tell us this too, Amy, because you were with me. Mm-hmm. We've been catching up on movies we've never seen, and also seeing some movies that are unlikely films for us. And movie theaters are fun over the holidays because other than gas stations, they're the only place open on the holidays. And yeah, this was you, Amy. You said, let's go see Puss in Boots.
Yes, the
Last
part 2.
Wish.
It's the second Puss in Boots that they created
Puss
with
in Boots, The
Antonio
Last
Banderas doing the character.
Yes.
And I just absolutely loved it. So I'd give that a thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
It was it was a bit contrived and things like that, and there were some elements that were just stereotypical in terms of the bad guy, and
it was kind of the bloated capitalist, even though he really wasn't.
It was, the bad guy was Little Jack Horner,
who
was actually Big Jack Horner by that time, and it was just that was stupid, of course, but it was a great film. It was not great, but it was just really, really fun.
And it's a film I couldn't tell you too much about without giving it spoilers.
Yeah.
But your protagonist, Puss in Boots.
Yes.
Puss. Pickles.
Pickles.
It's another one of these cases where what he's fighting are not the ostensive enemies. He's not fighting the bad guys. He's got to fight the bad guys. But what he's really doing is he's on his own personal journey and facing his own personal challenges.
Yes.
And that makes some of the best stories. I mean, that's Ayn Rand style, where the bad guys are never really central to the action. It's really what's going on between the protagonists.
Right. And then there is a theme of redemption with regard to the protagonist. And that's really nice. So
yes.
It was really good. It was really fun. It was very light. I went in with no expectations whatsoever. And
what made me think of it was, I haven't actually listened to the whole thing yet, but Yaron Brook did his year-end show.
I haven't heard it yet either.
And, well, one thing I can tell you about it is that he had a super chat matcher. Mm-hmm. So that he was going to try to raise as much money through. So he always does this at the end of the year's show. He usually gets thousands of dollars. Like, I think he had one where up to $5,000. Mm-hmm. And he had somebody committed to super chat matching it. So somebody who was going to donate to him anyway, but would match every dollar that was raised through the super chat. So he raised $5,000, which meant he raised $10,000. Well, this year he doubled it. He had somebody who committed to, if they could raise up to $10,000.
Yeah.
And if he could get over that, he would just get that straight money as well. I won't say whether or not he reached it in case you're curious but don't want to know in advance. But one of the super chats he received was one of the requests for a movie review. Now, for $100, Yaron Brook will review a song. You can tell him, I want you to review a song. And so this time somebody asked him to review a Jay-Z song, for example. And Yaron made the point, I don't think I've ever heard a Jay-Z song. But somebody also asked, actually two people always asked him, but I know one paid $480 for it, essentially $5 on top of another $20 chat, to review Puss in Boots.
Really?
So if anybody out there wants to pay Amy $500 for that review she just gave, you feel free. You feel free. Don't let me stop you.
But the thing is that it's not really a review unless I give spoilers.
We would have to do spoilers and give you a spoiler alert.
And but there's a lot more to the movie than you would expect.
There's adventure. There's romance. There's music.
There's redemption. There's a certain perspective on life that you wouldn't expect coming out of an animated film. And on top of that, I'll just say this. The reason why I went to see Puss in Boots was I just wanted to see cute cats, cute animated kitties with their cute little fur. And, when they make those cute little kitty sad faces, that's all I really wanted to see. But I got a whole lot more out of it.
There you go.
I just wanted some kitty cat warm fuzzies. That's
if
what
you
I was
had
looking
told
for.
if you had told me any time over the last 22 years, Robert, someday you're going to find your wife desperately in need of cat videos.
And it's a shame because Robert and I are both allergic to kitty cats.
This is true.
And
this is achoo.
They're just so sweet and cute. I saw a kitten video today, actually. It was really adorable. And I'm like, oh, this is just too much. The only thing is that for this year, starting January 22nd at the Chinese New Year, it will be the year of the bunny.
Oh my gosh, the Chinese year of the rabbit.
Woo!
That's the best year. The best year of all.
So 2023, welcome. It is worldwide bunny madness, I'll tell you. It's going to be great.
Well, Apollo Zeus just put in $500. It's not a real $500 because we don't have the super chat option until you like and share this show enough that we have 1,000 subscribers.
Yeah, when we see that PayPal or that Patreon come through from Apollo Zeus, then we'll know.
Yeah, you can still do that. And actually, people did that for Yarrow and Brooke. Folks who weren't using the YouTube super chat. They would just put in a PayPal and then put in a note saying, put in a $20 PayPal for you. So feel free to do that. My PayPal and Patreon accounts are available at robertnasir.com.
Just because of the holiday season, because you're all so great, I will do that review for $50.
For $50, you're going to do the review for $50.
Yes. So if anybody wants to sponsor
if we get that contribution, then we'll have to give a spoiler alert.
That review of Puss in Boots, and I promise I'll get it to you earlier than when Yaron gets hit to his.
Oh yeah, we could do it. We could do it in a whole separate episode with spoilers ahead of time and all sorts of.
It'll be like production out the door. It's like
it'll knock your socks off. You'll be like, "Where did my socks go?"
Production and assembly line production of Amy Nasir. So quick, so fast, completely ahead of schedule.
Yes, absolutely. So there you go, and that goes on the list of what have we been listening to this week? Yarn Brooks' year-end show was worth listening to. I've actually only heard 2/3-ish of it, maybe 2 hours out of the 3 and 15 minutes, but it's great fun.
I ain't got no time for that.
I know, it's so long.
I'm going to listen to it on 2 times speed.
That's true. You always listen to audio like at 1.5 or 2x. I can't do that. I mean, I can do that.
1 minute he's talking about Andrew Tate or whatever his name is.
Well, Andrew Tate, you should listen to it 3x, so that you don't actually understand any of it. I have things I could say about Andrew Tate. I talked about that last night at the New Year's Eve party, the uncomfortable and hilarious but terrible things that have grown out of that. I can't believe
Horrible.
that. What do you get when you lock Andrew Tate and Greta Thunberg in a room?
You get antimatter.
It was the most bizarre thing.
It smells really, really bad, like a toilet.
This manosphere clown college dropout gets into a pissing match with Greta Thunberg on Twitter, and she totally owns him. I'm sure you all have heard the news about this. If you care about social media influencers at all. But the final development of it that you might not have heard, but I could not believe it. My jaw just dropped it. Apparently, Greta Thunberg is now in trouble. You think, well, how could she be in trouble? She owned this Tate clown because Tate has now gotten himself arrested for sex trafficking. And his whole shtick is, I'm a man, I treat women like crap, because that's what women want. of course, and that's how you get to have a lot of women in your life. And part of it is his wealth. He will tell you how to make $1 million. What he doesn't tell you is the real way to make $1 million is to sell tickets telling people how to make $1 million. But he then posts on Twitter to Greta Thunberg, here's a photograph of two of my cars behind me. I don't know what it was, a Bugatti, something with, massive engine and massive emissions, which is what he was bragging about. Because, of course, Greta Thunberg is anti-fossil fuels, anti-carbon. And obviously an effective way to counter that is what? To get in a Twitter war about it and say, well, here's two of my cars. And he said, well, if you want information about all 32 of my high emissions producing gasoline powered vehicles, send me your email address and I will send you all of the specifications. So Greta Thunberg writes back to him and says, yes, I would love to have that list. Just send it to smalldickenergy@getalife.com. Now, I thought that was funny.
I'm not following this at all. Just so you know. What?
Well, Andrew Tate, you got to understand, Andrew Tate is a professional kickboxer.
I know MMA or whatever it is.
So he's a high-level athlete.
Goes to Romania, does sex trafficking, and
goes to Romania because it's easier to do sex trafficking without getting
arrested,
caught. Or he thought,
and what about Greta Thunberg? What?
Well, again, Andrew Tate brags about his gasoline-powered vehicles.
Right.
And as a member of the Manosphere, he's thumbing his nose. He's trying to own a liberal. Mm-hmm. And she's not taking the bait. She throws back an insult, which, okay, if you think that snarky comment from Greta Thunberg was light and trivial and shouldn't have had any impact, what you need to understand is Twitter, which is still going strong. I know people think Elon Musk is destroying Twitter. That's not happening. But whatever you think of Twitter, it is, between that and Facebook, they are the social media spheres that influence anything and everyone. That tweet by Greta Thunberg, which, what is it, a week old even, is now the sixth most viewed tweet on Twitter. Millions and millions and millions and millions of people have viewed this tweet and shared this tweet. So I know you don't get it, but they get it. They absolutely get the idea of this. And the funny thing, well, not the funny thing, one of the things is I have no respect for Greta Thunberg.
Well, I mean, it just sounds like she's just trying to throw her hat in the ring to provide herself relevance. I'm looking up Greta Thunberg.
Yes.
In trouble. That's
how dare you?
And
she's the original "How dare you" girl.
It says that. So it comes up, with Google-related questions about Greta Thunberg, and it says, "What was unusual about Greta Thunberg's yacht?" And I thought to myself, she has a yacht, huh? Of course she does. And I'm sure she goes cruising with Bernie Sanders all the time. And, and they go to his various vacation homes.
Well, Leonardo DiCaprio showed her the way. It's okay to use your private jet if you're saving the world from private jets. You've got to understand the logic there. But the only reason I tell that whole story is you haven't heard the end of the story yet. Well,
what?
You've heard it. Here's the amazing thing. Now Greta Thunberg's in trouble.
Okay.
Greta Thunberg is in trouble with the body positivity movement because she is now body shamed. Not Andrew Tate. I don't think she probably doesn't know anything about Andrew Tate's penis size, but it, the joke about it presumably being small and that would matter to somebody like Andrew Tate. Ha ha ha. But here's the thing. Yeah, all of the body positivity people are now beating up on Greta Thunberg because, well, let's face it, half of the men out there have penises that are smaller than the average. And those poor guys see this thing that Greta Thunberg said, and they're like, man, life is hard enough without Greta Thunberg. And you can imagine, especially people who admire or respect her, without her giving me a hard time about that. So who would have thought? I don't know. It's one of those cases where I have to remind myself that the enemy of my enemy is not my friend. Greta Thunberg is not my friend, and certainly Andrew Tate isn't. But it just goes to show that evil destroys itself, or evil destroys each other. You know, put Greta Thunberg and Andrew Tate in a cockfighting ring and let them duke it out, and then the rest of us can get on with our lives.
It reminds me of an old band that I used to listen to. It was an old industrial sort of dance band, kind of, sort of alternative music called Pop Will Eat Itself. And that's kind of, I think, what this is all describing. And the thing is that a lot of this is just a flash in the pan. It's going to go away, and people are... It's so irrelevant.
It is. It is. And
except for the fact that Greta Thunberg is still
dangerous.
Being praised and rewarded for her horrible ideas.
She's dangerous.
And,
And again, maybe I'm enjoying this more than is rational, but, anything that gets people to take her less seriously.
Yes.
And instead to take people like Alex Epstein more seriously on issues like climate change. I've got to think that that's a good thing. And that gets me into my topic here. Well, first of all, in addition to listening to Yaron Brook, I'm not even going to talk about the 3 shows that I did, except to the extent that they will come up in the conversation. Links are in the show notes under what are we listening to this week. But let me just skip forward here. I did talk about integrity in the context of New Year's resolutions and being who you really are, being your own best self, but not just being the best you can be, making sure you're being the best that you can be, making sure you're really being who you are, and putting yourself out there, and stop worrying so much about what everybody thinks or what their reaction is going to be, even if that means taking certain losses in your life, because believe me, in the end, it'll be worth it. And I talked about that in the context of the new year. Mm-hmm. And James Valiant and I talked about that as well. And one of the things that has come up in this context more than once is this idea that the world is in decline. The intellectuals of the world are being replaced by people like Andrew Tate and Greta Thunberg. The intellectual world is becoming a clown show. Now, I don't believe that's true. I think we've always had, 5, 6, 7 years ago, Andrew Tate was Milo Yiannopoulos.
Yeah.
You're always going to have clowns. They're not relevant to the intellectual world, because in the intellectual world, you still have intellectuals. And I mean popular intellectuals like Sam Harris and Steven Pinker and Jordan Peterson and Tim Ferriss and Barry Weiss, and I could go on. Decent people speaking intelligently, being more or less rational.
Oh no, I mean I think the thing about the world being in decline, and I think that the Ayn Rand Institute has always had a very proper perspective about this, a very reality-based perspective on what is the barometer for philosophical and moral decline in a culture is what are the university professors teaching? What kind of ideas are they anti-reason? Are they what exactly are they saying, and what sort of variants of, and then of course there's all sorts of variants, as you could say, in terms of like what Greta Thunberg is talking about. And I think it is getting perhaps a little bit better now than it was, say, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And there are more professors out there who are, kids go to college and they're sitting there in class. And I mean, this is what I used, what I had to go through as well. And a lot of people had to go through this if you went to college or university, and you listen to the professors drivel, and then they back it up, like Greta Thunberg, with some sort of appeal to morality and some kind of guilt-mongering and shaming of people who don't think the way that they do. So what are those ideas in the universities currently? I think that's the best barometer for it. I mean, otherwise, in terms of the clown show, it's been going on for years. I mean, I remember back in the 70s when the band Devo came out. Their specific concept is de-evolution, which they've been, touting for all of these decades, and things are not devolving into civil war and all of this, or something out of idiocracy. And there were just a lot of those sorts of perspectives back then, even before then, where people were warning other people about how things are going to devolve into the future in terms of philosophical and moral ideas, and specifically about how people are going to live their lives, and they're just going to become less educated, anti-intellectual, and you see some of that, but I don't think that if you look at a cursory glance or anecdotal glance of what's in the news in terms of pop culture right now, whether that's Andrew Tate or Greta Thunberg or whoever, it's not going to tell you much, because clown shows have been going on for decades, and they will continue to do that. But again, it's a flash in the pan. It's the next Milo. It's the next whatever it is.
I could not agree more wholeheartedly, or more whole-mindedly.
Thank you.
Yes. But with that said, one of the points that I want to make, and one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you tonight, and incidentally, I see Jeff Bannister in the chat. Jeff, apropos of the topic at hand, it's easy to say size doesn't matter, but Jeff made the most massive super chat contribution to the Ayn Rand Center UK this week. That was super generous and very cool, and totally made my day.
And he says, whip it good.
Whip it good.
That's correct.
Speaking of Devo, yes. It's strange that Devo had this whimsical idea of de-evolution.
Yeah.
Which philosophically was, arguably one of the worst things you can imagine.
It's nihilistic. It's what it is.
And yet, it was obviously not meant to be taken that seriously.
Right. I mean, there's sarcasm and satire involved in their music.
Yes.
Anybody who knows that band knows that. And right now, Mark Mothersbaugh, the lead singer of Devo, and Jerry Casale, they're both quite wealthy and quite successful and living their best lives and having grandchildren and
writing movie soundtracks and scores and
Mark Mothersbaugh has had such a success with movie scores.
They are happy capitalists and great artists.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, like I said, the better intellectuals are out there. But the clown show continues, and it makes the headlines. For some reason, people will go to a podcast app and listen to, Niall Ferguson talk for 2 hours, 3 hours, or Barry Weiss, or Lex Fridman. But those people don't make headlines.
Yeah.
Even though they are a more important part of the conversation than anything that Leonardo DiCaprio has to say.
Hey, in the chat on YouTube, we welcome you, Jesus bot spammer, and I'm going to go ahead and block you now.
Oh, we have a Jesus bot.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
Jesus the robot.
Oh, like the guy who was shouting at us on the side of the path that we did the 5K, the turkey trot.
Oh yeah.
In Detroit. And yeah, whenever you have a really big one, with tens of thousands of participants, but it's in a public space, you inevitably have the one guy with the cheap megaphone on the side of the street tell you, Jesus is coming for you, and you need to stop what you're doing right now and repent. Read Isaiah 12:47. Yeah, you get that kind of thing. But yes, goodbye, Jesus person.
Yeah. And I actually had a great time during that 5K at the Turkey Trot down Woodward Avenue in Detroit. And during Thanksgiving morning, and when this guy was yelling out and barking out his Jesus orders, I had this really lovely moment where I look straight at him as I'm jogging past him, and I just give him a big thumbs down, and it was quite satisfying.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, he put in a comment there that says, "Gnash your teeth, Allah." Do you think maybe Nasir has him assuming that we're Islamic or something?
Perhaps. We're obviously Muslim.
Yes. Look at our clear Middle Eastern influences.
Pretty obvious.
Oh well, whatever. So there you go. Some people have too much time on their hands.
It's always fun to get those. We rarely ever get those. So
yeah.
It's nice.
Yeah. Well, maybe it makes the case for anonymity, and I'll start using my pseudonym. Whatever that is.
Honest Bob?
Honest Bob, that's right. Right. Honest Bob, coming to me for philosophic ideas and the best used car deals. Mm-hmm. There you go. So, yes, parts of the world are in decline, absolutely. I've been getting reports, because I've asked for them, of tell me why you think the world is in decline. And here's what I put out there the other day. And I've been thinking about it more and sort of developing the idea. Because what if the culture really was in decline? And it was in decline in such a way that eventually, not just politics, but even science and technology will take a turn for the worst. And not just the economy, but everything gets worse. What if the pessimists are right about the state of the world? What do you do?
So say, for instance, the dollar tanks, inflation skyrockets, and you're really having a hard time making ends meet with the kind of money that you're bringing in. And say, for instance, even if you don't have a nest egg, or anything to fall back on, which, by the way, you really should have that. But there are all sorts of things that you can do. Obviously, you can scale back. You can learn to eat more cheaply. You can learn to live more cheaply. And you can also figure out ways, creative ways, to make your life just as good as it was, perhaps. You just have to kind of reframe what your values are and then figure it out. We talked about this earlier. We thought, if the Nasir nest egg or Nasir income is not as good for this year, or however it is, of course, with your support, it hopefully will be better than this past year. But if it is that way, we can just reframe, refocus, and focus on different values, or perhaps limit the list of values that we interact with on a given week or given month. Don't go out to movies, don't go out to eat, but make really excellent food at home and cook at home and learn how to cook really delicious things. Or, if we need to cancel all of our subscriptions for streaming, we could turn to our various board games that we have at home, and we can play board games instead of watching television.
See, I don't think it'll ever get that extreme.
Just,
I love the idea.
Thinking outside the box and being creative about it and being playful about it. And
but what's interesting is that it doesn't actually happen that way. We don't end up having to cancel all our streaming. What we have to do is cancel 3 or 4 of the channels.
Yeah.
We don't actually have to stop going out. We just have to go out less often. We don't actually have to stop doing anything. We just do a little less of it. Or we do it more efficiently, or we do it more intelligently, or we work a little harder to keep exactly the lifestyle we have. But that's the question is, as the Police song goes, as Sting once sang, when the world is running down, you make the best of what's still around. The question is, if the world really was in decline, what would you do? Because I know so many people who answer that question. And their answer is, you become depressed, you become angry, and you start protesting and spreading more philosophic ideas and writing to your Congress critters. In other words, taking political action. Mm-hmm. And all that's good, but then what? And that's why my question for you, my question to you for the season is, so what? And I want you to put a comma after the word so, because that changes everything. If things really were getting worse, are getting worse, so what? So what do you do? So what does that mean? What is your next move? See, even if the world is not progressing as rapidly as it should, even if the world is in somewhat of a state of decline, it still remains, what do you want to do with your life? What do you want to do with your remaining years alive?
Yeah, what you going to do with all that year?
What are you going to do with all that year? What do you want to stop seeing your friends because things are getting worse and I'm just angry? Do you want to stop going to places and seeing beautiful things and going to see wonderful films and reading wonderful books and engaging in friendship and engaging in romance and going to dances and going to parties and going on vacations and traveling to places and going to see sports activities and football games or soccer games and going to art museums and going to concerts? Obviously, I could go on, and I'm making the point that even if, and I don't believe this is true, but even if we were in a world in decline, so what? What next? What do you do? Do you still love this life? Do you still live with passion? Do you still enjoy your values? Do you still love the people in your life?
Yep. And there's so much opportunity to do that. Facebook is still not charging us to use their service. So there's that.
Yeah. Well, I had a taste of that the other day. This is the craziest thing. You won't believe this. It'll sound like torture. You'll be like, how did you survive? We went to Greenfield Village's holiday nights. Some of you know, historical museum, Dearborn, Michigan. Beautiful events and singing and Christmas carols and jazz music Christmas carols and historical homes and cooking, just all these wonderful Christmas things. But here's the thing. Oh my gosh. We left the house. We get halfway there and I realize I left my cell phone at home.
Oh, yeah.
Ah!
Oh.
I spent the whole night without a smartphone.
Oh my gosh, you must have not have been smart.
I didn't have a camera.
Lost all of your IQ points.
I didn't have any way to check my social media. I couldn't post about the Christmas carolers on Facebook. And it was just, when that happens, when you leave your cell phone at home, it reminds you, oh yeah, I don't need to be in touch with everything happening out there in the world all the time.
True.
And so it lets you think, well, what if things stop improving? Or what if a company like Facebook actually goes out of business or turns into some kind of company you no longer want to deal with? What if Twitter goes out of business because Elon Musk just managed to fudge it up completely? What if, and worse than that, what if different companies go out of business? What if certain factories shut down? What if certain things that we take for granted right now?
Yeah, Jim has a what if.
Yeah.
What if outright tyranny is piled on top of all that, attacking your freedom of movement and speech?
It's a great question because, well, it depends on what you mean by outright tyranny. Do you imagine us becoming like, tyrannical Canada or Mexico or France? Or do you imagine us becoming as bad as Belgium? Or are you thinking that somehow the United States could actually become North Korea? No, we will go through a Belgium phase. We will go through a Greece phase. We will go through an India phase well before we do anything like North Korea.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening.
I mean, I see, say, for instance, if they tried to institute kind of the Chinese social status points that they do in China, and they've got facial recognition, and no, you can't take the subway unless you kowtow to the government or whatever it is. Yeah, that would be really bad. I think that would create outright chaos and violence in the street and rebellion. It wouldn't just be people dropping off immigrants at who's our vice president?
Kamala Harris?
Kamala Harris's house.
Who is our vice president? Who is our president of
Does she
vice?
say anything or do anything anymore? Anyway, but anyway, yeah, if you've heard that thing, of course, I'm absolutely pro-immigration, but I mean, just in terms of, it would be a heck of a lot worse than that.
Yeah,
and
you've really got to believe that the United States could skip all of those interim steps, and that somebody like Kamala Harris or Bernie Sanders would say, okay, now we're North Korea. Think about that if you're the kind of person who entertains those kind of thoughts. Think about that for a moment. What would it take, in fact, in reality, to go from where we are now to that? And I don't mean in abstract philosophic terms. I get it. I understand that every regulation, every rule out there, every tax is a violation of our rights. So in theory, total, complete fascism is just the same thing. It's not. Mm-hmm. What would happen in America?
Yeah.
If that kind of thing was attempted? There
would be steps.
There would be steps. And
it wouldn't all just happen all at once. Yeah, and then there would be a lot of backlash because of those steps.
Yes. As bad as things are now, and as much as we've got to keep fighting everything we're fighting,
yeah,
this ain't that. This ain't nothing like that.
If the Chinese, bless their hearts, push back against complete and total lockdown in China for COVID, like they did, then I feel like there is hope for the United States.
Yeah, I think there's more than hope. I mean, just the fact that, and I'll throw some controversy on the fire, just the fact that Donald Trump got elected. Whatever you think of Donald Trump, and I don't think much of Donald Trump, but there is a point at which so many people will say no.
Yeah.
That even somebody like Donald Trump can get elected. And elected over calmer heads. And we've talked about that before. Well, if they wanted liberty, why didn't they go for Ted Cruz? No, because Ted Cruz would not have been an explicit no to what they were saying no to. Anyway, won't get into that too much, but think about that the next time you think about a world in decline. Is that, well, first of all, I don't think the world is in decline. Go to humanprogress.org. Go to, read Superabundance, the latest in a long series of books that will remind you how everything is improving all of the time and on a regular basis. Listen to Yaron Brooks' year-end show where he talks about technological innovations and vaccines and anti-malarials and anti-cancer drugs that had amazing breakthroughs this year. But even if you say, well, that's just innovation, but it's all being halted by the increase in political power, look at the progression from Bush to Obama to Trump to Biden and ask yourself, well, how did that happen? And how is it that Hillary Clinton couldn't win the White House and Bernie Sanders couldn't win the White House? It's sooner than you think.
Yeah, and on top of that, anytime there are situations where free speech is being deteriorated, oftentimes it's not the anti-immigration, pro-tariff, anti-abortion right that is sitting in their basements creating new apps to get around certain regulations from governments. It's the left, it's the young leftists who are creating those apps, who are creating all of those ways in which to promote freedom of speech.
Who'd have thought?
Who would have thought? Just keep that in mind. I know
Yeah, the next time that you think
It's
the war is left
frustrating.
versus right.
Right. It's not.
It's not.
Yeah, you're going to find a lot more people than you would expect who want to promote freedom of speech.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So real quick, because I said this would be a real quick show, and that was a lie. Well, it was not intentional, though. Real quick, looking back on 2022, in January, the national debt reaches $30 trillion. Under Biden. So, less faster growth of the debt than under Trump? Go figure. Figure that one out. I'm not saying this is good. This is bad. This is really, really bad. But I expected it to be substantially worse.
Yeah.
Now, also regarding climate change, Dave Barry has published the first 6 months of his year in review. He says, best of all, the looming apocalyptic threat of catastrophic global climate change was finally eliminated thanks to the breakthrough discovery that the solution, it has always been staring us in the face the whole time, was to throw food at art. Now, obviously, he's making fun of the just stop oil, just something oil? Just something oil.
Yeah.
These people who are crazy gluing themselves to asphalt and artworks and throwing soup at, fortunately, well-protected paintings.
What a bunch of maroons. Sorry.
It's hard to believe that it was just February of this year that the war in Ukraine started, or rather the operations in Ukraine started. This war has been going on since 2014, but the real war started in February of this year. Unbelievable. In March, where am I at here? In March, Will Smith slapped Chris Rock across the face during the Oscars. In April, Elon Musk put in a bid to buy Twitter for $44 billion. In May of 2022, May of this year, Johnny Depp sued Amber Heard for defamation, and he won that suit in June. In September, Queen Elizabeth passed away. Whatever you think of the monarchy, it's very tragic, both because of her dignity and because of the fact that it left Charles to take over the country. Yes. And in November, one more tidbit from 2022, the world population hit 8 billion people.
Woo! Yeah!
That is absolutely cause for celebration. Incidentally, I did hear that part of Yarenbrook's show. He had the same reaction, Amy, that you did, and that is the correct reaction.
The more the merrier,
The more
folks.
the merrier, the more the better. The
Absolutely.
more the human resource.
The more minds, the better. The more minds, the more chances of innovation and the promotion of individual rights.
Hell yes.
Yeah.
Julian Simon was absolutely right, and Paul Ehrlich can go to hell, Sinky.
Finland.
My point is, I'm always keeping an eye out for news stories, but I'm also always keeping an eye out for news stories that I know a month from now will mean nothing, but which feel like they are telling me something about the culture. They feel like they are telling me something about the culture war. They feel like they're telling me something about the philosophic state of the world. The fact that Will Smith slapped Chris Rock was obviously a great failure of decorum.
Yeah.
And the Oscars used to at least have some dignity, but that's been gone for years.
Since the streaker that Ayn Rand talked about ran across the Oscars stage.
They recovered somewhat from that, but look at the people who host the Oscars now.
Yeah.
Who host the Golden Globes now. It's a freaking comedy show. And I love Ricky Gervais, but the fact that he now hosts these award shows and has done so several times, then it's over. It's over.
They may as well not even put the words on. I mean, it's there's such a lack of earnestness there.
Yes.
Why even bother?
Exactly. So it's not good that Will Smith slapped somebody. But, two guys got in a fight because one of them insulted the other's wife. Oh, okay, well, shouldn't have happened. Not initiation of force. I'm good with that. But you think that's telling us something about the state of our culture?
Yeah. Well, you know what it really tells me about, there's a I think it's called Upworthy, which is a website that basically hosts good news stories when people's Southwest Airlines and also the other flights that were canceled due to the cold weather.
Yep.
People were. There was a story of these 4 young kids, the 2 girls and 2 guys, and they decided to rent a car together, and they were both going to near the same destination in Ohio, I believe, Cleveland, from Florida, and they decided to drive together and take turns driving so that they could get to their destination for Christmas. And it worked out. And because of social media, the 2 women kept texting their friends and family saying, so far I'm not getting any serial killer vibes from the guys. Yeah. But it all worked out, and everybody behaved cordially and nicely and got the job done. They didn't even know each other, complete strangers.
Yep. It's a real-world version of the cute little story from Home Alone where Catherine O'Hara ends up riding in a U-Haul in the back of a truck with John Candy to get where she needs to go. Those things players. Really happen. Yes. Well, I don't think there were any polka players this year, but
right.
Exactly. That is reality.
Things. You know what? When we went to the movies the other day, there was this guy who had never been to the Henry Ford, the Henry Ford Museum and the Giant Screen Experience. So he had his wife and his daughter were somewhere else in the museum. He was in line with his young son, and he had literally 4 or 5 layers of piled on nachos and
he had concessions for a family of 4.
And I mean, he was literally like this. I mean, and I saw him. I'm like, you know what? There were all these people coming into the line. The line was way back there, and he was right next to us, right outside the line, and we were in the line. So I said, "Sir, you're with us," and I unlocked the little the rope, and he came in. And he thanked us.
Now you've got to be careful about that because we have a number of viewers in the UK, and they're cutting queues in the UK is a mortal sin. But I think you did exactly the right thing. If that seems bizarre, one thing you have to understand about Amy is that she actually works for the Henry Ford.
So I feel like I have a certain amount of authority there.
She doesn't work at the movie theater, but that's irrelevant.
So I will do these things for people. I will help people who will need help, even if I'm off the clock. And it's just a fun, wonderful thing because honestly, the people who come to the Henry Ford are the best guests in the world. I have quoted Ayn Rand on doing good things for people you care about is part of the virtue of integrity. Listen to my last ARC UK show if you want more on that. So, Amy, I think you did exactly the rational and right thing. And again, as you take in the news, it's not that you shouldn't pay attention or enjoy reading about the trial of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, but don't let yourself think it matters. Not as an indicator of the state of the culture, the state of philosophy in the world. Actually, the great thing about trials like that is read the judges' responses. Read the actual legalese, and it will give you more faith, even though these people are duking it out for whatever reason. When you actually read what even the Supreme Court justices, who we sometimes disagree with, when you actually read what they write, and they are intelligent, and they are rational, and trust me, things are much better than you may realize. It doesn't matter that Elon Musk foolishly bought Twitter for $44 billion. Happily, I made a bunch of money on that deal. But, yes, he's acting very silly. Because he can. I guess, I guess so. I don't know exactly everything that's behind that curtain, but well, you're not a Twitter person. I'm not. To me, Elon Musk is that guy that a lot of us, when we were young, we wanted to see that. We wanted to see wealthy people having fun with their money. Yeah. And he's not just wasting it. He invests tons of money in everything that he does, his SpaceX ventures, his Tesla ventures, all of the things that he does. And he's got this Twitter thing.
And he's got an idea of, there should be more free speech there. I could make this better. But he's having fun with it. Okay, we could argue how rational he's been about it. But don't you remember being young, being a kid, and thinking, I don't know, rich people don't really seem to enjoy their money. I'd like to see them have a little more fun with it. So that's how I think about Elon Musk. I don't regard him as, an unqualified, without qualification, as a hero. But I don't know. I'm digging it. I'm still digging it. I'm still getting a kick out of the fact that he is enjoying the wealth that he produced. I
really enjoy the fact that he brings Starlinks to Iran.
He brings Starlink to Iran and the Ukraine. He's providing internet access.
Fantastic.
He's having a great time, and most of what he's doing having a great time is some of it's whimsical, but I don't think it's whim worshipping. And it's mostly good. Some of it's downright heroic. So more power to Elon. Again, I hope he doesn't crash and burn Twitter, but I don't think that he will. Likewise, all of these other people in the news, I don't think that they're going to crash and burn the culture. And I certainly don't think that they're going to crash and burn the world. I still believe on the evidence that things are getting better all the time. There are some things that are definitely getting worse, and you can point those out. Here's where we've had blips in the improvements. But by and large, we're on an upward track. And finally, even if it turns out we're not, I got a life to live.
Yeah.
I've said before, when they hold a recession, I just don't participate. When inflation happens, I opt out. Now, there's only so much you can insulate yourself. Right. As Amy said, sometimes it means you got to downsize. Sometimes it means you got to reset your expectations.
Board games and stop streaming.
Sometimes it means you're not going to buy that new house next year. You're going to wait a few years. Or it means you got to sell the $500,000 house and move into the $300,000 house. Whatever the thing is, I refuse to participate in the way that the doomsayers think I have to participate. I'm not saying you got to do that. All I'm saying is it is a choice. And it's a choice you get to make.
And I'll tell you, there's a couple things you can do if you're feeling really down and out and really sad about the state of the world, however. Number one, obviously, is you can pursue your own values, and which is sometimes difficult, actually. It's kind of hard to be selfish sometimes. And number two, if you want direct impact, say, for instance, I was talking about the state of the universities and the professors and everything, find, go to the high school or the school that you went to as a teenager or the college that you went to as a teenager or young adult, and donate some Ayn Rand books to those classes. You can easily find somebody who's going to say, yes, please send me those books.
Yes.
And donate those books.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because when it comes to philosophical activism, Amy and I are engaged in it. When it comes to trying to save the world from itself, Amy and I are engaged in it. But what I want you to do is I want you to do that with passion, not with despair.
Have fun with it.
I want you to do that as a value, not as a defense measure.
Right. Perfect.
Yes. Incidentally, there's great stuff going on in the chat there. Jason Adams is talking, and they're not only talking about agencies of the government. I love this one, that in a way they need to exist because of what needs to be adjudicated. But, the FCC, for example, the managing of the spectrum of frequencies, or the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, and managing airspaces, in a way those agencies would need to exist. I know as objectivists we have the idea that they're so small that they would be absorbed by the police force, and their police force would just have, a building over here that is kind of their version of the FAA. I get that. So that's pretty cool. But yes, those things out there are legit. The other thing that Jason Adams mentions is, he says, I saw Knives Out Glass Onion last night.
Mm-hmm. We saw it a few nights ago.
We saw it, and we had slightly different reactions to it. I didn't enjoy it as much as the first one,
right,
which I thought had a lot more heart.
Me too. I had the same reaction.
But I didn't mind that this one was not as heart-filled.
Well, I'll tell you what.
I know your reaction to it was much more mixed.
Well, The one thing I absolutely loved was, and I'm forgetting her name. I have a hard time remembering the names or the characters and things that I watch sometimes. The protagonist.
Yes.
Her name ended up being Helen.
Well, don't spoiler alert here.
Just pretend I didn't say that.
Spoiler alert here.
Don't listen to me. Okay, so anyway, that lady, I'll just say this. When I first watched it and she came onto the screen, I'm like, God, is she beautiful? And she's a really, really beautiful black woman. I mean, she is, anyway,
yes.
She was stunning. And I really enjoyed her performance.
Yes.
Because she had some variations on her performance. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I think what might have left you cold, because it did for me too, is that throughout easily the first third of the film, it seems like nobody's likable.
Right.
Except, maybe for Benoit Blanc, but the detective, our hero. But yeah, for the first third of the film, it's just like, I don't want to be around these people. I don't want to see any of these things happen. I mean, some of them are charming, some of them are amusing. There's some humor there, which ends up being a plot point. It does all come together by the end. If you're watching it and you think anything was irrelevant, like they were just trying to be cute, think twice about that. That'll help you guess the end of the film. I liked it. I liked the first one better, but I definitely did like it. So yeah, recommendation for that. And Equal to Reality asks, have you seen See How You Run? I've actually got it open on a tab on my computer right now as a reminder that several people have said I need to see it. Given the reviews, I'm not sure. Amy, I'm not sure if you want to see that film. We'll see if we end up seeing it together. But the short answer to your question is no. Longer answer is, once I do, I will talk about it for sure. I got to wrap up. We are running long here.
It is, but we do have one more question that somebody asks.
Although Yaron Brooks' show was 3 hours. Mm-hmm. I mean, he made $20,000, but still, it was 3 hours long.
If anybody would like to match whatever funds we raised today.
Yeah, we need a matcher. That's what we need. Is any dollars you send us through PayPal will be matched.
Yeah, so, it was referenced selfishness is the hardest thing in the world. Well, we had talked about this particular Fountainhead scene with Peter Keating talking with Katie Halsey, who has been lobotomized by that time, lobotomized of all her values, and then they're like, I bet Robert will know that quote, and I know the quote, but I
could probably do it from memory, but the short version of it's the hardest thing in the world to do what we really want, and it takes the greatest kind of courage. Yeah, Keating figures out by the end of the book. I wasn't selfish enough. I didn't stick to my actual values. I did what my mother wanted me to do. I did what society wanted to do. And I thought I wanted that. I thought I wanted the success that would come with being what people want me to be. And he figures out by the end that there's nothing left of him.
And I'll just say, we had this conversation just a few days ago, as a matter of fact, about that scene. And it is a stroke of genius that Ayn Rand presented those ideas in the Fountainhead with a scene with Peter and Katie.
Yes.
I mean, so much meaningful significance, just heart-wrenching, just absolutely astounding. The way that she puts the way that she brings that scene to us is absolutely just I don't even have the words for it. It's amazing. An absolute genius what she did.
It hits you in the head. It hits you in the head like somebody throwing a copy of the Fountainhead at you.
Yes.
Like boom.
A hardcover version. The hardest hardcover.
Yeah. And I still get people who tell me, oh, no. The amoralists, the hedonists out there, they're actually happy because they don't have the objectivist ethics. They don't feel guilt over the bad things that they do to get what they want. But it's not the objectivist ethics that makes people feel guilty when they have built themselves into the bad guy, when they look in the mirror and know they are the enemy of every person they're going to meet that day. It's not the objectivist ethics that makes us feel guilty. It's reality. It's the facts. You don't have to be an objectivist to know oh, I'm the bad guy. And even to know that you're rationalizing by saying, yeah, well, it's not me who made the world like this. I'm just doing what I've got to do to get mine in this corrupt world. You don't have to be an objectivist to have the unsettled feeling of, I live in a malevolent universe, and I'm the winner in it, but yeah, I live in a nightmare. But I'm the king of the nightmare. Well, I would rather be a humble winner in reality than the winner of the nightmare.
Like Good Will Hunting. I'll take the wrench.
I'll take, yeah, I took the wrench. Yeah.
I gotta watch that again. Oh, so many movie references.
So,
today.
my post-it note for the week says, so, comma, what? And when you say so what, you need to put a comma there. You always do. My point is, again, even if the world's in decline, okay, great, world's in decline. Now what are you going to do? So what? What are you going to do?
Let's all get together and have a party with inexpensive things we can buy from Aldi.
Aldi. Okay, if the world ever gets so bad that I have to shop at Aldi. Actually, I don't think Aldi in Southeast Michigan is the same as it is in other places, because some people tell me they like Aldi.
True.
It's a grocery store. Grocery. Why do we say Shuri? It's just a C. It's a grocery chain out of Germany.
Yeah.
Comes to the United States and sets itself up as a super bargain brand with brand names you've never heard of, the worst kind of generic foods.
Yes.
But apparently they're not that
brand
bad.
Cans of corn and things.
I don't know. It's kind of weird. Anyway, if we have any Aldi fans, feel free to tell us in the chat. My Post-it note, of course, said so what, related to the topic, but what my real Post-it note for the week says, so I'm going to give you two this week. It says thrive. Because, we haven't talked about New Year's resolutions, and that's because I'm still planning the year out. But too. My theme for the year is to thrive. Now, if you're looking at this on the video camera here, you can actually see the Post-it note I'm holding up. It actually says survive. Mm-hmm. And then I've crossed that out. And the reason is I've done a lot of surviving this year. Now, it was a great year. We went to London, and we got to meet all the ARC UK and other friends in London, and we did a bunch of touring, and we saw Bath, and we saw Stonehenge, and we saw Windsor Castle. It was great. And we went to Ocon, and we got to meet all the people at Ocon. We had a great time in Washington, D.C., and we saw the Lincoln Memorial, and we kayaked the Potomac. It was great. But a lot of this year wasn't as epic. Part of it was just, survive makes it sound like, hard scrabble survival, but it was comfortable.
It was comfortable.
It was comfortable.
For me, it was a lot of hard work.
It was a lot of hard. Well, you were working all year.
Hard work.
But
yeah.
Well, you took the final couple of months, months, and made it epic.
What did I do?
Because above and beyond your day job, you started a workout program above and beyond.
Oh, yes, that's
above and beyond all of the other things you'd already done.
I gained muscle.
Yeah, well, and you rocked that dress last night.
Oh, gosh, I wore this dress that I haven't worn in like 20 years, and Robert says I rocked it. Thank you very much.
If you've seen the pictures online, and those weren't even glamour shots, those were completely unscripted. You rocked that dress.
Thank you very much. And I really have made a lot of gains this year, and now I just need to kind of take the inventory and just say, okay, now this is where I want to kind of go. I really upped my trajectory in a lot of areas in my life, which is really wonderful.
Yes.
And but I need to do more, and because I like to see results and happiness and more muscle.
So that's why my Post-it note says thrive, not just survive, but thrive. Yes. And that's going to be the theme. We're going to be working on our resolutions for the year, and I don't mean by resolutions, I mean resolutions, make more money, lose weight. No, I mean specific goals, and that's what I recommend for you. If you want tips on that, look at the recent videos that I've done with the ARC UK. A few of them all of them are posted on my Facebook wall. If you're not already Facebook friends with me, do that, or Twitter. Either way, links to those, robertnasir.com. If you go to robertnasir.com, don't miss out on those PayPal and Patreon links. Support the show. Some of you already do. You are why we keep doing this. Okay, you're all why we keep doing this. But the people who financially help us out with that, thank you. You're in our hearts. Greatly appreciated. We are working on plans for the coming year to develop the show in ways that will especially honor those of you who do that.
Yes.
I'm not going to promise any more than that. We've done it before. Some of the things happened, some of them didn't. But this year, we're going to be working on all of that. It's going to be good.
Hooray! Yay!
And unless there's anything else in the chat tonight, there's some great comments in the chat, but unless there's anything else I need to address.
Well, the great Jeff Bannister says, beautiful artwork, the sidewalk chalk.
Oh, you've seen my sidewalk chalk.
Yes.
Thank you. That's
He's
cool.
been following Robert's sidewalk chalk. Yay!
Yes, that's... Amy runs an art group, and I attend it, but I'm not an artist. So the closest I get to art is sidewalk chalk, sure enough.
Yes.
And well, I'm a musician, but it's harder to do that in an art group. They're visual arts.
You know, one thing that we're going to do is I'm learning with Robert. We're learning together music theory.
That's true.
And in like beginner guitar, at least for me, which I know some chords.
Yeah.
But you know, I need to improve on that. But and also, you know, ear training.
Yeah.
Which is really amazing if you've ever gone through ear training and music theory. It's really,
you've studied
like,
music theory before.
I have.
You just need refreshers,
But going back to it, it's like, you know, it's like rediscovering you have another sense, or that you have some sort of superpower that you didn't think that you had.
Yeah.
In your hearing. It's amazing.
Yes. So more adventures coming up. Thank you for mentioning the sidewalk chalk. I do have great fun with that, and if I ever stop doing it, I actually have neighbors, and like our mail delivery person will ask me about it. Oh, you're going to be doing something on the driveway there anytime soon? So thank you for that. Thank you, everyone who has stuck around this long. This is unquestionably and without a doubt the longest episode of 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir.
In the year 2023.
In any year. But yeah, certainly the longest. It's actually the shortest episode of this year.
Yeah. Because it's
the only episode of this year. Seriously, though, longest episode that we have done, so it was definitely longer than 5 minutes, so we may need to retitle the show 6 or 7, whatever it turned out to be.
Let us know if you have any ideas for titles that we might change to.
Yeah, if you have you should call the show that's too long. No, and also, and we always say this, and I do mean it because sometimes we've picked them up from you, if you have ideas for things you would like us to cover in future shows, or even whole show topics, put them in the chat, or put them in the 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir Facebook group, or contact me on any of the socials. I'm super public, which is why that weird guy probably showed up earlier, because I'm not very good with anonymity, or rather I've chosen not to. At some point, I'm sure I'll change my mind, and we'll see how that goes. But seriously, thank you for joining us.
Yes.
And as always, we wish you success. We wish you flourishing. We wish you an outstanding new year. 2023. Make it your best year yet. And we're going to go through that together, ways to do that, ways to make that happen. And as always, and especially because the holidays are still here, this is what, the 7th day of Christmas. It ain't over yet. We wish you love.